You think the Vatican is just about incense confessionals and holy water. Keep dreaming. The reality behind those ancient marble walls is something they pray you never look into. Let's start with the damn catacombs. No, not the tourist-accessible ones. They guide you through with a flashlight and a brochure. I'm talking about the undocumented levels, the ones without exits. You ever wonder why the Vatican is one of the most guarded places on Earth? Because it's not just a spiritual center, it's a vault, a sealed ecosystem of secrets, rituals, and operations. So deep even most cardinals don't have clearance, and when you finally peel back the layers, you don't find angels. You find masks, black robes, circles, Latin incantations that predate Christianity. Let's get real. Multiple insiders, former clergy defectors, even retired Swiss guards have all pointed to the same locations. Specific chambers beneath the Apostolic Palace in St. Peter's Basilica are off limits for reasons that have nothing to do with preservation. Why? Because those spaces are used regularly for ceremonies that aren't in any Catholic catechism. You think ritual sounds too. Alex Jones, why fine, call it a highly private gathering, still smells like sulfur and secrecy. To me, these events are not recorded. No photos, no reports, just hushed schedules, redirected security teams, and lights that stay off until sunrise. We're not talking fringe speculation here. There are whistleblowers, people who actually served in the Vatican's administrative body, who reported observing the movement of cloaked individuals past curfew hours, escorted by private guards in underground access points marked in no official blueprint. Do you understand what that means? We're dealing with it, Wu-layer Vatican, the one you see, and the one that actually runs things there. All question is, what the hell are they doing down there that requires that level of secrecy, armed protection, and total media silence? Let's follow the symbols, because these guys never do anything without plastering their signature all over it. The floors of these hidden chambers, those that have been described by insiders, are tiled in complex geometric patterns, Saturnian cubes, hexag, labyrinthine spirals, not crosses, not doves, not halos. And the rituals, think less. Last Supper, more eyes wide shut. Participants wear masks, horned, faceless, some bearing the ancient symbol of Janus, the two-faced god. And no, they're not doing this for fun. They believe these rituals charge their authority, bind their hierarchy, and open spiritual gateways. Oh, and let's not skip the materials used: blood, real blood. Don't ask who. Some testimonies suggest that it's from animal sacrifice, others are far worse. There's a pattern here: missing children connected to Vatican-run orphanages. Yes, that's been documented in Ireland and Canada, even in Italy. So spare me the outrage. This isn't speculation. This is a historical pattern of systemic abuse, hidden under bureaucracy and prayer. Do you think those kids just vanished without paperwork? No one ever asked what's at the bottom of those archival vaults, and maybe that's intentional. There's also something called the Ponte Code, a phrase that keeps coming up in leaked memos and unconfirmed transcripts. It seems to function as a call sign, or authorization phrase for accessing restricted catacomb areas. This isn't Netflix fiction. This is internal Vatican language. The Church has a literal internal blacklist of who can and cannot descend into those levels. And let me be clear, the Pope doesn't walk down there uninvited. It's controlled by a different kind of council. Not the College of Cardinals. Think older, think secretive, think faceless. And let's talk about one of the most ignored details: soundproofing. According to former maintenance contractors who did work on lower-level ventilation, certain corridors were fitted with industrial-grade acoustic suppression. You don't soundproof sacred relic storage, you soundproof operations. That involves screaming. Let that sink in. The Vatican operates as both a religious institution and a ritualistic fortress. Not all rituals are Illuminati-style, sure, but the ones that are, they are precise, timed, and reinforced with ancient symbology and secrecy codes that align with planetary movements and esoteric calendars. They're not doing this because it's tradition. They're doing it because they believe it gives them power, not metaphorical power. Actual, metaphysical control over hierarchy, access, influence. And it works, apparently, because nobody's stopping them. Every pope inherits the system, not every pope controls it. You ever taken a good look at Vatican City from the sky? No. Maybe it's time, because from that angle the disguise slips. This isn't a holy fortress. It's a geometric manifesto. Go pull up satellite imagery. Google Earth is free. What you'll see is a perfect alignment between St. Peter's Basilica, the obelisk in St. Peter's Square, and the surrounding colonnades. They say it's symbolic of the lambs of the church reaching out to the faithful. Cute, but geometry doesn't do. Sentimentality, the structure screams one thing. Power encoded through ancient design. This isn't Christian, it's Egyptian, and not in a historical appreciation sense, in a full-on esoteric command language kind of way. That massive obelisk in the center, it's not some ornamental antique, it's a literal solar pillar dragged out of Heliopolis and placed intentionally in the heart of Christ. The church didn't destroy paganism, they absorbed it, weaponized it. The obelisk is a phallic symbol tied to Sun worship and fertility rites associated with Osiris, the underworld, and resurrection cults. But instead of smashing it, the Vatican gave it a spotlight. You don't install a monument like that unless you know exactly what it represents and want to keep its power alive. And by the way, the damn thing is encircled by a giant eight-pointed star. That's not Christian iconography. That's esoteric symbolism. 101 Saturn, Ishtar, Venus, chaos and control in perfect symmetry. Let's talk about that eight-pointed star. Go trace its origin. Babylon, Sumer, ritual astronomy. And somehow it ends up in the architectural epicenter of the largest religious empire on the planet. Yeah, that's not an accident. These designs are placement spells they encode, meaning through positioning, orientation, and alignment. We're talking about a calendary. You walk through a clock built out of marble and shadows, the obelisk at the center. That's the needle on the dial. And when the sun hits it at specific points, during the solstices and equinoxes, it activates. The alignments sound crazy. The ancient world based their entire theocracies on this concept. The Vatican just scaled it. Nowhere's where it gets wild. There's an invisible axis that runs from that obelisk, straight through the basilica, into the papal throne. That line is astrologically aligned, not to Jesus, to Sirius, to Saturn. These aren't conspiracy fragments. Architects, engineers, and even Freemasonic researchers have confirmed the alignments. Go look at Vatican floor plans and overlay them with celestial charts. The evidence is in the blueprints. This is astrology engineered into infrastructure. And they knew what they were doing. These aren't medieval masons freelancing with their chisels. These are precision rituals cast in stone. You want more proof? Look at the burn-in colonnade, that massive semicircle of columns that surrounds the plaza like arms. It's not just an embrace, it's containment. It's the construct of the aura, baros, the snake eating, its own tail-turnal cycle, rebirth through control. The whole place is a temple to cyclical domination, dressed up as a place of salvation, and the church parades it like it's just good Renaissance design. That's not a design, that's a sigil. And don't even get me started on the Vatican keys. You see them everywhere. The crossed keys under the papal crown, one gold, one silver on the surface. Heaven and earth in the deeper occult language polarity. Male and female, light and dark. The key to the gates of this world and the next. It's alchemical dualism baked into a religious logo. This isn't devotional art, it's encoded authority. You think it's coincidence that the Vatican crest matches symbols found in Hermetical Chemy and Rosicrucian diagrams. These people didn't stumble onto power. They reverse engineered it through ancient systems. Here's the punch in the face. Nobody wants to admit the Vatican's biggest weapon is aesthetic hypnosis. The entire place is a spell made of architecture. You walk in and it hits your subconscious before you even register what's going on. The scale, the symmetry, the gold, the stone, it bypasses logic and buries itself in your instinct. That's not spirituality. That's psychological warfare. And the best part, they've got billions of people defending it without ever asking what any of it actually means. And still people look at that obelisk and say, it's just a monument. Ica right, just a 4,000-year-old pagan shaft planted in the heart of a Christian empire, surrounded by a solar symbol aligned with celestial gods. The church officially condemns totally normal. Keep scrolling. Let's cut through the polite garbage. This isn't about theology. This is about blood, literal blood, and the pattern isn't hard to trace if you're paying attention. I'm talking about specific dates where movements inside the Vatican spike, security teams reshuffle guard rotations, go silent and key. Entry points that are normally locked down get mysteriously accessible. We're not speculating. We're tracking behavior, consistent anomalies tied to dates that match occult calendars. April 30th, May 1st, June 21st. Belta Summer Solstice Ritual PowerPoints. Used across every ancient sacrificial system you can name, and guess what? Those exact windows coincide with confirmed disappearances of altar boys, orphans, and unaccounted youth from Catholic-run institutions across Europe and South America. Let's talk about that for a second, the orphan pipeline. That's not a conspiracy, it's history investigative journalists have already documented. Vatican-sponsored orphanages operating without accountability in Ireland. They found mass graves behind one of the facilities. Hundreds of children buried in secret, with no death certificates, no records, no official explanation. Why would an institution, supposedly built on compassion, cover up the mass burial of children? And here's the question nobody dares ask on record: who's selecting which kids go missing? Because they're not grabbing randoms off the street. They're selecting specific targets. Young, isolated, no family, no legal trail. The perfect supply line for underground operations that feed off silence. There are testimonies from former insiders, including priests who got too close to restricted corridors, who were told directly by superiors to keep their eyes forward and mouth shut. That's not church discipline, that's a threat. There's even a leaked report from a now defunct Vatican security unit mentioning unscheduled access being granted to the sublevels during high ritual days. The Vatican's response: denial through omission. They don't deny the activity. They deny the documents exist until another former official leaks the next one, and the cycle repeats. Now let's go darker. You've heard the term blood ritual. Most people assume it's symbolic. It's not. The rituals being referenced in the underground Vatican chambers involve actual bloodletting. It's been described as ceremonial, with Latin chants, masked participants, and detailed procedures that mirror ancient rites of Moloch and Saturnian cults. This isn't wild speculation. Ritual outlines match entries found in recovered grimoires, the kind the Inquisition used to burn people for owning, now locked safely in Vatican archives, except now they're the ones using them. And then there's the techia, modern surveillance inside a medieval city-state. Sounds like a contradiction, but it's not. The Vatican is one of the most sophisticated internal monitoring systems on the planet that includes biometric scanners, digital surveillance, and isolated data servers protected under sovereign immunity. They know where everyone is at all times, so when a child disappears inside those walls, understand something. It's not a clerical error, it's a sanctioned blind spot. That missing footage from the altar boys' corridor, deleted security logs, overwritten priests, relocated whistleblowers, silenced or reassigned to missions in remote areas where they're conveniently out of reach. Still think this is just an old institution struggling with modern PR, then explain why members of the Curia, high-ranking Vatican officials, have been caught traveling to known occult meeting zones. Not vacation spots, locations with ritual history. Montserrat, Bohemian Grove, Castel del Monte. We're talking about confirmed tracking data. Phones don't lie, and they're not there to spread the gospel. They're there for ceremonies the public isn't allowed to know exist, and if they were innocent, they wouldn't be using private encrypted communication lines rented through shell companies tied to Vatican banks. Speaking of banks, where do you think the funding for this crap comes from? The Vatican Bank has already been caught laundering billions through fake charities. That's public record. And when journalists trace those funds back, guess what they find? Closed-loop transfers into foundations with occult symbolism in their crests. These groups operate under cultural preservation umbrellas, but nobody's preserving anything except the machinery of exploitation. And don't tell me it's just rogue elements. You don't move bodies. Deploy armed guards, cancel security footage, override internal systems, and shift finances through offshore accounts without approval. This is coordinated, it's structured, and it's protected. It's at the highest levels. Every time a scandal breaks, they throw a bishop or two under the bus, issue a PR apology, and the machine keeps turning. That's not justice, that's misdirection. Let's drop the act and talk about the real power brokers behind the throne. Because the Pope isn't the apex of the Vatican pyramid. That's the puppet position. The real muscle, the Jesuits. And I'm not talking about Sunday school teachers with rosaries. I'm talking about a global intelligence network wrapped in robes. The Society of Jesus was never just a religious order. From day one, their blueprint was infiltration, manipulation, and control, political, educational, financial, spiritual. These guys studied their enemies better than any government agency ever did. And while The public sees priests giving sermons behind the scenes. They're running psychological ops with centuries of expertise. Ignatius of Loyola wasn't some humble monk praying in silence. He was a military tactician who built the Jesuits as a disciplined shadow army. Go read the Jesuit constitutions. It's not a spiritual guidebook. It's a psychological control manual. They train their initiates to erase their personal identity, obey superiors without hesitation, and use any tactic, deception included, to serve the greater mission. And here's the kicker: they've embedded themselves into every level of the Vatican structure, from doctrine committees to financial boards. You don't get to be Pope without Jesuit approval. That's not a theory that's been confirmed through Vatican election histories. And the role of the Jesuit general, often called the Black Pope, a man with more behind-the-scenes power than the guy on the balcony. In White, let's get clinical for a second. Jesuit spiritual training includes visualization rituals, meditative deprivation, trauma-induced identity restructuring, all designed to create mental pliability and absolute loyalty. Sound familiar? It should. Those are the same principles used in MK Ultra, except the Jesuits didn't need a CIA program. They were doing it in the 16th century. They teach their recruits to simulate mystical experiences, manipulate emotions, and present dual faces to the world. One for the masses, one for the inner circle. This isn't religion, it's social engineering wrapped in God talk. Their reach doesn't stop at the Vatican. Jesuit universities are in every global capital: Georgetown, Fordham, Sophia University in Tokyo, Pontifical Gregorian in Rome. These aren't just academic institutions, they're indoctrination centers for elite grooming politicians, judges, economists. Even intelligence agents go through these schools and come out with a new dialect, a carefully programmed worldview that serves institutional power. You think that's an accident? The Jesuits don't believe in chaos, they believe in planning. 3 moves ahead. Want a taste of their involvement in modern events? Go look at how many Jesuit-trained officials are in the EU, UN, IMF, World Bank. These guys don't just spread the gospel, they write policy, influence global finance, and shape culture. Through media partnerships, the Vatican's control over global narratives doesn't come from church sermons. It comes from academic influence, silent board seats, and strategically placed operatives in diplomacy. This is covert governance. Note evangelism. And now let's flip the coin. Jesuit rituals. People think they're just highly educated monks. Wrong. The inner circle engages in esoteric practices, rooted in Hermeticism, Kabbalah, and Babylonian mystery systems. There are reports from defectors, yes, people, who actually went through Heil training, saying they were introduced to initiatory rites involving sacred geometry, astrological invocations, and communion with archetypal divine intelligences. These are not mainstream Catholic sacraments. These are ancient occult rituals hidden behind Latin chants and golden chalices. You want to know how deep it goes? Look at the Vatican Observatory. Ever ask why the Church needs one of the world's most advanced space observatories located in Arizona, funded by the Jesuits and connected to research into deep space and, wait for it, extraterrestrial life? Not my opinion. The Vatican has held multiple conferences on astrology and alien intelligence. That's not Sunday homily material. That's a clear indicator that they're operating with a completely different knowledge base than the average believer. The Jesuits are managing that research. You connect the dots, their symbols: black sun, IHS logo, surrounded by solar rays, 3 nails. These aren't casual Christian logos, these are layered sigils. The black sun ties back to Saturnian death cult symbology. The IHS, ostensibly standing for Jesus, is often surrounded by a sunburst with 32 rays, a direct reference to esoteric solar deities. Jesuit architecture hides labyrinths, twin pillars, checkerboard floors, classic elements in occult design. Again, not theory. Go visit their universities, go look at their chapels. It's in the floor tiles, in the altars, in the blueprints. Now connect that to the Vatican's political diplomacy. The Jesuits serve as unofficial envoys when there's tension between nations, when deals go dark, when religious figures need to be silenced or redirected. It's the Jesuits who move in, not with guns, but with doctrine, influence, and access. They shape papal statements, they ghostwrite encyclicals, they create the talking points that reach billions of people. And when a pop starts going off script, he doesn't last. Let's talk about Mr. Negra, the Black Mass, not the Hollywood garbage with pentagrams and goat heads. I'm talking about the real thing. The one that happens under the Vatican behind closed doors under the protection of diplomatic immunity inside walls. No security ever gets to see. And no, this isn't something invented by metal bands or edgy authors. The Black Mass is documented in occult circles, referenced in ancient grimoires, and confirmed by multiple former insiders who didn't just hear rumors. They were in the damn room. Here's how it works. The entire ritual is inverted. Every sacrament, every prayer, every gesture from the Catholic Mass is reversed. The crucifix is flipped. The holy texts are read backwards. The uterus is desecrated, not symbolically, not metaphorically, physically desecrated in ways so disgusting. I'm not going to describe it here. You want to know how deep this inversion goes. The Latin chants aren't just backward phrases. They're ritualistic keys, unlocking what practitioners claim are portals, energetic gateways designed to summon and bind entities, not angels' entities. And these aren't biblical metaphors. These are ancient names pulled from pre-Christian texts. Asotus, Moloch, Samel, every one of them tied to destruction, deception, or domination. Now here's the part that really burns through. This isn't done by rogue Satanists in a basement. This is happening in the belly of the most powerful religious institution on earth. High-ranking clergy, bishops, people with access. This isn't conjecture. In 1978, an anonymous exorcist working directly under the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith leaked that he was brought in after a secret ritual went wrong. He was told to keep it quiet, sign papers, and disappear. That guy vanished from public record a year later. Try to find him. You won't. Let's follow the structure. Amaskra begins with a mock mass, but the mocking isn't the end goal, it's the mechanism. These priests, yes, ordained Catholic priests, intentionally defile their own rituals to reverse the energy signature. The altar becomes the platform of desecration. Sometimes it's a table, sometimes it's a human body. Not symbolic, a real living restrained person. Usually young, usually isolated, often drugged. Again, this isn't fiction. There are victims who've spoken out only to be ignored or discredited by church media. Those who scream too loud end up institutionalized or dead. Look up the case of the French seminarian who threw himself off the Vatican roof in 1994. His suicide note was confiscated within 10 minutes. That's not grief. That's a cleanup job. The symbols used in these rituals aren't arbitrary either. You'll find the double-headed eagle, the inverted pentacle, the sigil of Baphomet etched into chalices hidden from public view. Many of these symbols are identical to those found in Masonic and Rosicrucian rites, but here they are fused with distorted Catholic liturgy. It's a hybridized religion, occultism draped in vestments, and before someone screams baseless accusation, let me remind you the ex-Jesuits, expelled cardinals, and former Vatican archivists have documented these connections for decades. They just get buried under layers of press releases and reassignments. You know who oversees these black masses? Not the Pope, not directly. These are presided over by what insiders call the shadow hierarchy. Unlisted bishops, cloaked authorities who never appear in public, whose names aren't on any Vatican registry. They report to no congregation. They hold no public position, but within the walls, they have unrestricted access. Multiple accounts refer to them wearing red and black vestments, not the traditional white and gold. These aren't variations, these are code. This is the light priesthood of the dark side, embedded in the core of a system you were told was built on divine light. Now ask yourself, how does this exist without exposure? Simple compartmentalized clergy have no clue. Even the mid-tier bishops operate under total denial. But at the top, they know they enable it. They protect it. Vatican security knows when these rituals are scheduled. The Swiss Guard gets special orders, clear hallways, restrict access, shut down power grids for maintenance. There's no paper trail, because there doesn't need to be one. These people have been doing this for centuries. They've mastered the art of erasing evidence before it's even created. And the kicker, the relics used in Missagra aren't fake. They're real hidden artifacts the Vatican keeps in the secret archives, never seen by the public, never spoken of. Chalices made of onyx blades etched with Babylonian glyphs, pages torn from pre-biblical scrolls said to contain direct invocation texts. You think the Vatican just collects history? They collect tools, ritual instruments from every major occult civilization on Earth. Egypt, Sumer, Chaldea. You don't keep that kind of arsenal unless you're planning to use it. You want to talk about networks? Let's get real. The Vatican isn't just a church, it's a geopolitical weapon, a silent empire with diplomatic, immunity, financial sovereignty, and global influence stitched into every elite institution that matters. This is the only city-state on Earth where intel agents, bankers, religious leaders, and occultists can sit at the same damnable. And it's not a theory, it's documented. You think the CIA isn't in there, grow up. The Vatican's relationship with Western intelligence goes all the way back to Operation Gladio. Post-World War II, real black ops, real bodies, real cooperation, church assets were used to funnel Nazi war criminals out of Europe. They called it the Ratlands. Vatican priests were the couriers, the facilitators, the protectors. While you were taught about saints, they were laundering war criminals with Red Cross papers and false passports. Now take that history and bring it forward. The Vatican doesn't just bless governments, it plays them. The CIA doesn't operate inside the Vatican. They partner with it because nobody else on the planet has more influence over population behavior than the church. They've got centuries of experience in mass persuasion, ritual, psychology, and moral engineering. So when the intelligence community realized they needed soft control, religious authority was their golden ticket, and the Vatican played along. Why? Because control flows both ways. You get cover, you get access, you get silence when you need it. Most financially, it's worse. The Vatican Bank, formerly called the IO, isn't just some divine piggy bank. It's been a money laundering engine for decades. Drug cartels, arms dealers, intelligence agencies, they've all used it. Look into the Banco Ambrosian scandal. Roberto O. Calvi, the God's banker, was found hanging under Blackfriars Bridge in London. His pockets stuffed with bricks. His murder was ruled a suicide, sure, and the Pope didn't know. The bank's collapse exposed direct Vatican involvement in covert funding, channels that ran through South America and into paramilitary groups. That's not fiction. That's documented financial warfare. And the Vatican was at the center. So how do you keep a criminal financial machine alive inside our religious institution? You wrap it in holiness, you use canon law as a shield, you invoke the sacred when questioned, and you kill the trail. Everyone who gets too close disappears. Investigative journalists, financial auditors, even internal clergy. Their deaths get buried under phrases like heart attack, accident, or transfer to a remote monastery. Look at the 1982 Vatican Bank report that was supposed to go public. Never released, suppressed. Why? Because the numbers didn't match the doctrine. Billions unaccounted for / funds. Black budgets. Let's go deeper. Ritual and finance aren't separate, they're two arms of the same beast. The Black Ops world needs energy and influence to function, and these rituals, these ceremonies, they're not just spiritual, they are transactional. Blood gets spilled, oaths get sworn, currency flows, and the Vatican acts as the gateway. Needs safe passage for a trafficked artifact. They've got the diplomatic pouches, need a priest to launder intel into theology, done need a ritual site for analyte, group that answers to no one. Welcome to the private chambers under the Apostolic Palace. Now let's talk handlers. Certain high priests inside the Vatican aren't just there for liturgy, they're control agents embedded by larger networks. Their job is to monitor information, neutralize leaks, manage disinformation. They use spiritual language as cover, but their methods are pure intelligence. Tradecraft, coercion, threats, psychological manipulation. Some are even trained in NLP and advanced interrogation tactics. They operate under the authority of unofficial councils you won't find on the Vatican website. Councils whose members don't wear vestments but sit in high ceiling rooms with esoteric symbols carved into the stone. It gets uglier ever. Wonder why the Vatican has embassies in over 180 countries. Why do a religious institution need that level of diplomatic footprint? Because those embassies are intelligence hubs. Just like any government, they process information, they move assets, they make deals. Some of the dirtiest negotiations, inhuman trafficking, arms movement, and psychological warfare have run through the same hallways where rosaries are sold to tourists. These guys aren't praying, they are playing the oldest game on earth, power wrapped in righteousness. And when deals go south, when someone doesn't follow orders, there's a cleanup protocol. No drama, no headlines, just a quiet reassignment, a staged scandal, a convenient death. Then the operation continues. It always continues because the system is designed to self-correct. You don't build a multi-trillion-dollar centrist spanning influence network without having backup plans for your backup plans. You've seen the images, golden altars, marble saints, halos on ceilings. But what you haven't seen is the room they'll never show you. It's real, and multiple. Insiders have confirmed its existence tucked beneath a Vatican complex not listed on any public tour map. There's a sealed chamber housing a statue no one talks about. Officially not Christ, not Mary, not Peter. The figure is humanoid, wing towering, and nothing like what you'd expect inside a Christian sanctuary. It's got the eyes of a serpent, the posture of a monarch, and at the center of its forehead, an 8-pointed star not across that Saturnine, that's esoteric, that's not Catholicism. This isn't some relic from ancient times they're preserving out of archaeological respect. This is maintained, ritualized, worripped. The Latin engravings around the base aren't biblical, they're invocations, real ones found in synchrogrimus used in high-order ceremonial magic. The statue is seated on a throne, resembling the throne of Satan, as described in Revelation, flanked by 2 serpentine figures and inscriptions that refer to Samuel and Sabbath names, associated not with light but with rebellion, with darkness, with dominion. We are not talking about metaphor here, we're talking about the physical architecture of spiritual control. This isn't decoration. This is a centerpiece, and it's restricted to a handful of individuals in the Vatican's highest echelons, not just bishops, operatives, people who serve 2 masters, one in daylight and one in shadow. These spaces sealed by security that doesn't answer to the Vatican police. They answer to a different chain of command, one layered under secret papal councils and shielded by centuries of fabricated holiness. Let's talk about how it's used. Reports from obscurity dismissed. Priests 7 a few. Former insiders have all pointed to one thing. This room is used for enthronement rituals, literal ceremonies, where a representative not of Christ, but of the iconic order is crowned with silent oaths and sanctioned rites and blood seals. The ritual ends with a blackout, candles-only Latin chants, invoking Saturnus, Osiris, and Lucifer, not metaphorically name by name, entity by entity. And while they tell the world they're worshiping God, they're kneeling in front of this thing, in total submission. There's a corridor near this chamber that's covered in mirrors. That's not some aesthetic decision. That's ritual architecture. Mirrors aren't for reflection. They're for projection, for fragmentation. You take someone through that corridor in a trance state, and they're primed for programming that's psychological. Warfare disguised as mysticism, and it's been used for decades, probably centuries, to initiate new clergy into levels of service they never agreed to publicly. Once you've knelt in front of that statue under that ceiling after repeating those chants, you don't come back the same now. Let's hit the artifact collection. This same hidden wing of the Vatican contains scrolls and grimoires banned for over 1,000 years. Book of Enoch fragments not found in Ethiopia. Sumerian incantations with instructions for soul binding and sealed pages. From the Pacatrix, these aren't being studied, they're being used. These documents aren't behind glass for display, they're referenced, cited, brought out during ceremonies. Some are inscribed in gold on black and vellum, and stored in temperature-controlled vaults. That's not preservation, that's preparation. And what do these texts describe? Portals, star alignments, gates of the gods that open at specific planetary conjunctions. Most of these align with Saturn cycles. Why Saturn? Because it's the timekeeper, the enforcer, the lord of the material realm in esoteric systems. Saturn is the true king of Earth, the one that binds souls into flesh. And that's the core of these Vatican-level rituals, anchoring spiritual authority to a Saturnian throne. It's the final inversion of Christ's message. Not liberation, but control. Not forgiveness, but judgment. Not spirit, but prison. That's why the architecture repeats the cube. That's why the engravings use sigils from Chaldean astrology. That's why even the Pope's official coat of arms hides references to Mithras and Janus. Duality, control, manipulation. You were told this place represents God. What it represents is an ancient order that predates the Church and outlived every empire. Before it, and now in 2025, the Vatican stands not just as a religious relic, but as the throne room of a global spiritual deception. It's where ritual, finance, politics, and control converge, and at the core of it all isn't a crucified savior but a crowned serpent surrounded by silent priests and blind followers. You made it this far, you listened. You look past the distractions, and for that, I want to thank you not as a YouTuber, as someone who's been digging, reading, asking, and connecting dots for years. None of this is theory. It's pattern recognition, it's data, it's testimony, and it's buried under centuries of golden sense and pageantry. But you pulled the curtain back. Thank you for watching, for thinking, for not looking away. And don't forget, awareness is the first weapon. I'll see you in the next one.